Hi everyone. So I promised you a review of the midterm, very basic. Um, Normally I would try to do slides, but I do my slides usually in our studio, especially for this kind of thing. And my R studio is over here. It's been running for about 6 hours trying to do uh, a pretty complex project with some big data. And I've actually been working on it for about a week, running into the same kind of errors you all have been running into, um, mostly because of the size of the data. Um, so, um, so I definitely have great sympathy when you run into errors. I also, if I sometimes seem frustrated, it's because the errors frustrate me too. And I know you all are just starting out with this, um, so having errors is normal. You actually, if you keep doing this stuff, you're never going to get past the point that you have errors. So learning how to solve them is important. Um, anyway, to the midterm itself, I'm going to start with the basic rules. Um, Formulas will be provided in mathematical notation. I have not finished doing it yet, but I believe I'll be able to give you a formula sheet on the screen that you'll be able to click on from any question to bring it up. Um, you can bring a calculator. Any calculator is fine. The proctors have been told you're allowed a calculator. It can't be the calculator on your phone, though. It has to be an actual, just a calculator. There will also be an on-screen calculator in Lockdown Browser. As far as calculators go, you don't need anything more advanced than square root. You can do everything with plus, minus, uh, multiply and divide, and square root. Um, so, uh, so calculators, yes. You have to follow proctor instructions. You get one attempt at the test. Other than if there's a technical error, and the proctor should be able to help you with that, you get one attempt. You can't leave and come back. Um, and that's just a rule of the testing center. Uh, so go in prepared to be there for however long it takes you to answer the questions. There are no makeup exams. If you miss your scheduled time, um, the final exam percentage will be applied to the 250 points for the midterm. That's for any reason. Flat tire, didn't leave home on time and got stuck in traffic, medical emergency, other kind of emergency, family emergency, doesn't matter. Or just got drunk and were too hungover to take the exam. Whatever it is, I trust you as an adult to make it to the exam, and if you can't, that the makeup is you get the percentage of your final exam score times 250 points. So no extra credit. There are extra points on this exam. If you miss it, you don't get those. Format: 40 questions, you'll have 60 minutes. This is sufficient time for most people, and if you qualify for extra time because of whatever through the Dart Center, um, that will be in there, so you'll get your 50% or whatever extra. But typically, 60 minutes is going to be plenty for most people, and I actually think it will be plenty for most people, even who qualify for extra time. But you will get the extra time. Um, the questions are entirely multiple choice, true, false, multiple answer format. Each question is worth 7 semester points for a total of 280 available. The semester point scale requires 250 points for a perfect score. So there are 30 extra points available. There's nothing that is specifically labeled as extra credit. It's just that there are enough questions at 7 points apiece that if you answer them all right, you're going to get more points than you need. Um, and you do get those extra points. If you run above 250, you get extra points that count towards your full semester grade. Computation questions. You're going to get two one-variable data sets. What I mean by that is there's only the variable x or the variable y. You don't have to worry about a second variable. These are basically just going to be a series of observations, uh, just like we did in class, for the mean, median, mode, variance, and standard deviation. And so there will be one question for the mean, one question for the median, one question asking about the mode, one question asking the variance, and one asking the standard deviation. Other computation questions, you're going to get one two-variable data set. What do I mean? I mean there are going to be variable x observations and variable y observations. So you're going to have both. Three of the questions will involve finding the mean, median, variance, or standard deviation of one of the variables, and it may switch. So you may find the mean of x and then find the variance of y. So you need to be careful. Make sure you're answering the correct variable to the correct question. So, but three of them though are going to be the relatively easy stuff: mean, median, variance, standard deviation. Two of the questions are going to involve finding the sample covariance and the sample correlation of one of the variables. Um, that that is to say, you definitely will find the sample covariance and sample correlation of one variable. Um, so, um, or not of one variable, rather, it's not of one variable. It's the sample covariance and sample correlation of the two variables together. That's what covariance and correlation are. Um, so you'll go through those steps. The formulas will be provided, but again, the best thing, just like with finding the variance and standard deviation, the best thing is to understand the process. And the process for finding covariance is really similar to the process for finding variance, except that instead of squaring the differences from the mean and summing them up, we multiply the difference for x times the difference for y and sum those up. Understanding the process is important. And the process for covariance is not that much different than the process for variance. The sample correlation, it's not the same as finding the standard deviation, but it's similar in that you take the covariance and you put it into a formula with some other things. So understanding how these work is going to do you more good than necessarily referring to the formulas. More computation questions. There will be 5 questions where you'll be given one or more previously computed statistics and then asked to find one or more other statistics or parameters. So for example, I might give you the mean and the variance and ask you to find the standard deviation. And hopefully you recognize that one of those two things you don't actually need. So do be aware there may be something in there that you don't need, and there may not. I may just give you things you need. So depends how nice I was feeling. But realize you are going to have some where you're going to be given something like the variance and told find the standard deviation. It's actually a pretty simple problem, but if you know the process, for most of those you're not going to need formulas, but the formulas will be there to jog your memory. Then there are going to be conceptual problems. These are going to be based on any of the core concepts from the book or lectures. So these you can find in the syllabus topics from before March 11th, actually mostly for before last week. I think we covered a little bit of wrap up last week, but mostly these will have been covered before last week. C-level questions, there will be 5 of. These are basic concepts that if I were to just give you an exam and that was going to be your grade for the first half of the term, you would need to know these to qualify for a C. B-level questions, these are average difficulty concepts that you should not know to qualify for a B. There will be 5 of those. B+ level, these are going to be moderately difficult concepts. So these are not going to be easy, and they're not going to be average difficulty. Just realize these are going to be things where you're going to have paid attention. You're going to have read the stuff you needed to read. You're going to have done some studying outside of class to get these in most cases. If you're a statistics genius, you may get these with less than that. But for the typical person, these are achievable, but you will have to have done some studying. Um, so these are the B plus level questions. There will be two of those. A level questions. An A level question in if I were to just give you an exam and it were going to be multiple choice like this, um, you've got to do some critical thinking. These are applying knowledge to something that we may not have specifically discussed. So these are going to be things where you may have to take two concepts and put them together, or you may have to take a single concept and apply it to something. These are that's what A-level mastery is. These are the things, so these are multiple choice questions, but these are the things that if I were to give you short answer and essay questions, these are the things that would be the essay questions, the things where you would have to reason through them. And if I gave you an essay question, you'd have to explain to me why. For these, you're actually getting the right answer somewhere among the four. So it's a little easier than an essay because if you can apply any critical thinking, uh, the fact that the answer is staring you in the face should be helpful. So it's actually easier than if I were to give an exam that was seriously going to be the core grade. Um, but still, they're the kind of things you need to know if you want to be considered A level just based on the exam. Uh, we're not basing everything on the exam in this class. There's lots of other points. So if you don't get those two A level questions, it's 14 points. It's 14 points uh, for the semester. It is not the end of the world. But you should try to get them because if you get them, it's 14 more points. Uh, R questions. There will be 6 questions. There won't be any coding, so I'm not even going to give you like an example and ask you to pick out the right code or something. By the final exam, I will probably do that. Like I will give you something and say which code is correct. Nothing like that here. Um, there are going to be two things that anyone paying attention really could not have missed. One of those may require a little bit of thinking, but still, these are things that have been covered in. I've said the words for these things in every lab except maybe lab 0, multiple times, multiple times. If you missed these two, you were not paying attention, or you didn't do the labs, you didn't show up, whatever. I mean, these are two that should just be gimmies, 14 free points, really. Uh, there are about 4 that anyone who did the labs can look at them and reason them out from experience and context. It doesn't mean that I necessarily repeated them dozens of times, but I definitely said them when we were doing the labs. Uh, some of them may only have been from a specific lab where I mentioned them. So it may be that if you miss that lab, you may have to find it somewhere else. But they're all things that at least you can reason out from experience and context. The biggest hint I can give you on the R questions is review the top hat questions where I ask questions about R. Um, other than that, actually, I think I will keep this short. So other than that, I'm just going to tell you, I think that all of you can do well on this. Uh, don't stress out too much about it. Remember that reaching that A level, if you reach the A level on this test, that's actually going to mean that you're probably above 250 points. It probably means you're coming out with extra points to apply to something else, like the final or whatever. If you come in at B level, you certainly can still get an A for the class if you're doing everything else right. And even if you come in somewhat below C level, remember that the requirement to pass the class with a C is that you have to have an exam average of 50% or more. So we're doing lots of other things in the class. So So don't stress out about this, but do take it seriously because you have to reach a minimum level to get a C, and you have to reach a minimum level if you actually want an A for the class. But you can do that if you've been doing everything else. And if you've been doing everything else, reaching those levels, if you've been studying to a C level, then getting the C level questions on this should not be an issue for anybody. If you've been studying to an A level and doing the things for A level work, getting A level questions shouldn't be a problem for anybody. Um, so that's all I have, and I will see you all. Enjoy your spring, get this taken care of, and then enjoy your spring break.